Auf Wiedersehen, Fräuleins. Welcome to Babylon Berlin Babble, here at Double P Podcast at Double P Media. My name's Bubba, and today we're going to be breaking down all of Season 1, the first 8 episodes of Babylon Berlin. If you haven't seen the first 8 episodes, boontabah your way back to Netflix, Sky Atlantic, however you see them, and watch them there, and then come back and join us. Joining me today is somebody who always needs to see a priest. It's Catfish. Catfish, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Bubba. I don't know whether I have a fever, but it's definitely not a fever for Fräuleins.
Not a fever for Fräuleins? What's wrong with Charlotte?
All right, I always have a fever for Fräuleins. Yes, I am filled with excitement to talk about the entirety of Season 1 of Babylon Berlin.
And our next guest on the podcast is somebody whose young son hasn't shot him yet. It's Double M. Double M, how you doing?
I am doing great. There are no holes in me as far as I can tell. Want to wish everybody to stay safe and wash your hands.
Goodness gracious, that is exactly correct. Listeners in the future will speak to people in the future and tell you that we are recording this on day 5 of the United States coronavirus break. We're all on a break on coronavirus. We're all probably streaming too many shows. One of the few companies whose stock hasn't been hit in this pandemic is Netflix, because everybody's watching. Everybody's inside watching. Once again, Netflix is here. How we see Babylon Berlin in the United States. And we're going to be covering up the first 8 episodes or the entirety of Season 1. Sometimes it gets very, very tricky, because this story of what I call the train car story takes up Season 1 and Season 2 to complete its arc. And the episodes in Season 2, the first episode of Season 2 is titled what? Episode 9. And so it does get a bit confusing, but today we're only covering up through the infamous Cologne photo blackmail scandal.
Now, Bubba, I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
Do you know whether this is the way it was done in Germany when they did it, or if, as far as the first season was 8 episodes, or whether Netflix just decided to split these in 2? Because I have to tell you, I've never been so underwhelmed by a season finale than I was for this show. It was a story interruptus for sure.
Exactly right. The way I understand it, Catfish, is if you go back to the very first episode of Babylon Berlin, the cold open begins with Dr. Schmidt seeing Detective Rath, and Rath has these visions of everything he's experienced. Well, we haven't seen all those visions because some of those are from Season 2. The way I understand it is that it was aired like the way we would consider it here in the States is these first 8 episodes were aired in the fall, and then what we would call Season 2 was really just the next 8 episodes which were aired in the following spring. So it was more like one season of television there, but for whatever reason this is how it's been broken up, and Netflix is trying to honor that original, okay, this is the first season, this is the second season. Does that make any sense?
I can definitely confirm that Johnny Klimek, when he scored this, when he sat down with Tommy Tickwer to do this, they had the 16-episode plan, and then Klimek actually wrote everything before they even finished shooting the first 8 episodes. But it was all supposed to be one presentation, just I guess it was split up, like you said.
So this is more like what we've been seeing lately, which is sort of like a mid-season finale. Some shows are doing that now, where they're trying to sort of set it up, and then they go away over the holiday break for a few months.
Right.
You know, Walking Dead is trying to sell that.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. It is a bit of a mid-season break, even though it's technically on Netflix and everywhere else known as Season 1 and Season 2.
I mean, the only thing that really gets resolved is that we know is that Rath gets his hands on the film. Other than that, nothing is really resolved.
That is exactly right, Catfish, and that's why you just said it. We need to get to our rankings out of 10. I'll go ahead and go first and say that the way this is set up, and of course I watched this 2 years ago now, I really only think of it as these first 16 episodes. And so I'm with you. It doesn't really reach a climax so much as it somewhat resolves, or I would say totally resolves, the blackmail of the clone mayor question mark story, and then it's going to spiral into the next things. And what I find most troubling in a rewatch is that all the fireworks that are about to go off have not gone off. So this is a bit like if some of you listeners have enjoyed Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones Season 1, those first 5 episodes are good, but it isn't until the back half of Season 1 that we get to the fireworks factory. And so if some of you are wondering when are these fireworks are going to go off, honestly, they're going to start going off a pretty big damn firework about every 2 episodes as we get into Season 2. And they are huge fireworks. But all that said, for these first 8 episodes, I'm only going to give it, and I say only, I'm only going to give it 8, what I like to call double D's out of 10.
Double D's?
Yeah, I haven't figured out what the double D is yet. All right. No.
Well, I came up with something right away.
Wait, hold on. I only gave this 8, what I like to call double R's out of 10.
Double R's?
Well, that's what we over in Germany, that's what we call rally riots. It's when you go for a rally and it breaks out in a riot. That's what happened at the May Day protest or the workers' union protest rally. It broke out into a riot. So 8 out of 10, still very good, but when I want those fireworks, I'm going to have to wait a couple episodes, and then once we get into the meat of Season 2, they're going off all the time. So 8 out of 10 for me. How about you, Catfish? What's your ranking out of 10 for Season 1 of Babylon Berlin?
Well, obviously I had to put this on the double S scale.
Wait,
Double S?
Double S?
Yes, secret sausages.
Oh.
Because, as you know, when the wife's away, the mouse will eat a sausage and drink a beer. I am going to give this series, for an American viewer, I'm going to give it 5 double S's for the first season.
Whoa. That's pretty low,
I'm going to give it 5 double S's. As we go through, I'll ask you all the questions that will show that I did not understand at all what was going on for the most part. The biggest thing was the whole deal about this train is that for the whole, I would say, first half of the season, I was like, oh, it's the money train. It's the money train. And then there's the swapping of the train numbers and all this kind of stuff. And then whatever the one, then all of a sudden it's not the money train. Now all of a sudden it's the poison gas train. And I don't understand why that happened. I don't understand if the money was never real or if the gold's in another one and then they just stumbled into the poison one. I don't understand what's going on at all with the politics. I don't understand how Rath is still alive or why. It's beautiful. It's beautifully shot. The last time we talked, we covered the first 2 episodes, and I think it was a lot more positive because I thought things would become clear rather than less clear. And we didn't have any more amazing musical and dance numbers, which was really spectacular at the end of episode 2. I joked with you, Bubba. I sent you a text saying, I can understand why this is a series that no one is talking about.
Tough. Well, I've been generally positive. Catfish has been generally negative. Double M, you're going to break our tie here on Babylon Berlin Babble. What is your ranking out of 10 for these first 8 episodes?
Well, I got to go with your scale, Bubba. I'm going to double R scale.
Oh,
double R?
Yeah, Russian resurrections, because you just can't kill Kardakov no matter how many times you try. I'm going to give it 8 out of 10. I think that I'm slightly colored out because I have seen the whole series, and so that makes some of this stuff make more sense to me than it does to Catfish. I can certainly understand your confusion. Things become a lot more clear as you go along. But
how long do I have to wait, for God's sakes? It's been 8 hours.
For me, Catfish, the thing that got me and kept me through the whole first season was actually the investment that I developed with the characters. I sympathize with Rath and his problem. I find that some of these people are just super creepy. I'm amazed that Kardakov can jump off of bridges and buildings and survive. And it's fun.
Well, we have given you our opinions, listeners. Please write to us at Double PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/DoublePHQ. And you let us know how you felt about these first 8. If you have finished the whole series, like Double M and I, let us know. But try, if you're commenting in a public forum like Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or Instagram, no spoilers except for the first 8 episodes. Or if you're having trouble like Catfish about like, when are all these pieces going to come together? And let me say, there are so many pieces. Let us know as well. At Double PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/Double PHQ. And what I thought I would do is, because Double M, you just talked about the characters or what brought you through these 8 episodes, I thought I'd play a new game here on Babylon Berlin Babble. And that game is, we're going to have kind of our own March Madness. And the March Madness contest is, who's the worst? So the 3 of us are going to decide, as we go through almost all the characters, who is the worst here in the Weimar Republic of Germany. We're going to start off with our 2 heroes, our 2 dual protagonists, and that's Rath versus Charlotte. Now, Detective Rath, is he the worst because he's addicted to drugs, he's lying to colleagues about what he's doing, or is Charlotte the worst because she spied on Rath for Wolter? Let's go to you first, Catfish. Who is the worst, Rath or Charlotte?
Oh, for sure. I'm Team Charlotte all the way. She doesn't have the cushy upbringing. She's not the son of somebody famous. You know, she's living her life according to the rules of society, but also trying to squeeze all the juice out of it. She's got high hopes for herself. She wants to become a cop. She does a lot of really good, she's a lot better detective than any of the policemen on this show.
That's true.
You know, I know that she's not going to, I can't imagine she would actually become a policewoman. She is the best. She is awesome. You know, Rath, he says he's a big fan of his brother's wife. He's got the little thing on it, but, you know, whatever. Any port in a storm, even if she's the landlady. I mean, come on.
All right, so that is your vote, Catfish, is Detective Rath is the worst of the 2 of them?
Dump Rath.
All right, how about you, Double M? Where are you on the who's worse, Rath or Charlotte scale?
Oh, I mean, I'm with Catfish completely. You can't ditch Lotte quite yet. All she did was just make this mistake for her own benefit so that she could become a cop. You know, Wolter kind of hung all of this over her head. She didn't really have a choice. It was like being blackmailed. Rath, on the other hand, you know, he's just going around handing body parts and porno pictures to a drugstore, you know, in exchange for heroin. So Rath's definitely the worst.
Okay, that's going to be unanimous because I am all Team Charlotte as well. But now we're going to team up the partners. We've got Rath versus the crooked cop Wolter. Now let's talk about what Wolter did. He blackmailed Charlotte into sex and spying on his partner Rath, and he seems to be a member of the Reichswehr. So let's go to you this time first, Double M. Who is worse, Rath or Wolter?
Well, I'm totally anti-Reichswehr, so that makes it Wolter the worst, period. If he's having meetings with Seegers and all these guys, and Janicke is reading lips about some kind of plots and everything and writing it down in his little notebook, then I just can't trust Wolter. So Rath's the better guy, Wolter is the worst.
Catfish, how do you go, Rath or Wolter?
Okay, which one of them had delicious sex with Charlotte and then laid there in bed contentedly naked like some tomcat that had just had his fill of dinner? I am Team Walters as well. Listen, I was against him because he's like, you know, let's lie about what happened here, but he backs up Rath. Rath takes this money and gives it to the druggie. Insane. And Rath just laughs about it. And then and Wolter just laughs about it. And then when Rath is like, we're going to watch these movies, Wolter's, instead of like, we'll hold on to these movies for blackmail, he just sits there and enjoys it. He's like, oh man, I've had dinner with that dude. This is awesome. Wolter's is living his best life, and I am on his side.
So that means you vote Rath the worst of the 2.
Rath is the worst.
Wow.
Oh, man, that's good. And what's great is I knew you would vote that way.
I mean, that's when he sat there naked and contented I was like, that was it. I got completely converted.
Now, while I do look up to him for having fun in the sex dungeon with Charlotte, blackmail is wrong. You need consent, people. So I will break the tie. Apologies, Catfish. I'm going to say Crooked Cop Wolter is worse than Rath. So now he gets to go into the next round, round 3. And we have so many characters, we're going to start creating teams of people who are together. So it's Crooked Cop Wolter versus Police Chief Zorjabel and Political Police Captain Benda. So what did Zorjabel do? He ordered the cops to violently break up the Mayday rally. Not good there, Police Chief. And then what did Benda do? He's like, we need to come up with a cover-up story and make it look like the police were the victims of the riot instead of the ones doing all the killing and brutality. So Wolter versus the two heads of the police department, Zorjabel and Benda. Catfish, we know how you voted last round. Who's the worst of these groups?
I mean, if we were doing this in reverse and we were saying who was the best, I don't know how far Wolter would go, but it'd be pretty far in my book. So, obviously, I'm going to say Zorjabel and Benda.
All right, Double M, how about you? What is worse, a Crooked Cop Wolter or these captains of the police?
Catfish, your argument is sound. You've made it perfectly clear that you didn't understand a single thing about this series at all so far. I'm definitely voting Wolter again because he didn't have to write that report. He could have told Benda no. He could have stood up to Benda. And Benda's actually doing some right things. He's looking for Treaty of Versailles violations and all these other things. You know, these guys are multi-layered. And Wolter just doesn't seem to be so. He's just kind of sleazy, like COVID.
Excuse me, he went in to the club to back up his boy Rath.
He did. He saved his life. But okay, so I'm going to break this tie, and this time I'm going to side with Catfish, and I'm going to say that actually being a police chief and ordering a riot of union and communist members marching through the streets, and then I really do like Benda, but coming up with this BS cover story shows that he possibly is willing to do the same things that Wolter is. Now, you're right. We're gonna see how that goes as we go into season 2, but I'm gonna vote the police leaders are the worst. So now they go into round 4, and of course we're gonna have the police leaders against the criminals. In this case, the bearded mobster, the Armenian, and Dr. Schmidt. So the Armenian, what did he do? Well, in the very first episode, he seemed to feed a guy his own brother's tongue, and he has blackmail photos.
Implied only.
Right. And the Armenian seems to have been holding blackmail material on many people. And his good old buddy, Dr. Schmidt, seems to be building a brainwashed army of broken soldiers from World War I. So the police versus the mobsters, Double M, of these two groups, who's the worst?
Well, that's a tough one, because if you're going to make that argument that you made for the police guys, well, the Armenian's just a businessman too, right? But I think just because normal business practices and health code practices do not allow you to feed somebody their own brother's tongue, I'm going to have to go with the Armenian on this one for the worst.
Catfish, who's worse, the police leaders or the mob leaders?
Well, I am going to have to agree with Double M on this one, only because it's understandable that a guy who is a crook would do crooked things. But people who are supposed to keep law and order, who actively oppress the citizenry, are sort of higher up on my level of bad. So I am going to say, I'm still going to go with Zorjabel and Benda.
Okay, you guys have given it to the cops. I have to be honest, I guess I could go that way, but Dr. Schmidt just creeps me out so much I was going to vote for them. But the criminals get off. So, okay, here we get into some of the political factions. We've got those police leaders, Zorjabel and Benda. And this time they're going up against the Trotsky communists, led by our buddy Kardakov. So what did they do that was terrible? Well, back in the very first episode, those Trotsky communists hijacked a train and then murdered the train conductors to smuggle in gold. Theoretically, they paid the price for it, but they still are up in this March Madness ranking. So who do you have?
So you're still saying it was gold?
We'll get to that in a bit, Catfish. So who do you have, Catfish, as the worst? Kardakov and the Trotsky communists or the police?
I'm still gonna go with the police. I mean, after all, if Zorjabel and Benda hadn't set such a bad example, you guys would have seen how much Wolters would have shined.
Double M, where are you going? You going with the police as the worst or the Trotskys?
Well, in this case, I almost got to go with the police because all Kardakov did was, jump off a bridge onto a barge of coal and break his foot or something like that.
Oh, that's 2 for the police. Once again, I am tempted to go with the Trotskys, but they did pay the price. So the police, wow, they are doing well. They're going to round 6, where it's those police leaders versus Svetlana. And so why is Svetlana the worst, possibly? Well, she did betray her partners, those Trotsky communists, to the Russian embassy and the Stalinists, who ended up killing them all, except Kardakov, who is unkillable. She also seemingly has manipulated birthmark on his face, Nyssen, to learn about his secret train shipment, and so she could attach the gold card to it. So who do you have as the worst, Double N? The police or Svetlana, the double, possibly triple agent?
You know the old saying, money is the root of all evil, and we saw Sveta playing around in the gold, so I got to go with Sveta on this one. She is the worst. The police get off.
Wow. Catfish, who do you have as the worst, the police or Svetlana?
Well, I got to go with my heart here, even though I want to be contrary. It is, again, Svetlana, because she betrays everybody. She is her own country. At least the cops are like, we got to protect our own. We got to protect our own. Walter's got to protect himself. But her worst crime, though, is that after episode 2, she stops doing the entertaining cross-dressing and singing any entertaining songs. So because she's too busy double-crossing everybody she knows to bring more entertainment to the series, I'm going to vote her in as over the cops.
Hey, at least she shoots Kardakov in the get up, right?
And was unsuccessful. That's another point why I'm going to vote her the worst over the police. Okay, so now we're getting into some bedfellows. In round 7, we've got Svetlana going up against the Reichswehr. So we have, that's birthmark face Nyssen, Major General Seegers, and all their members. So what have they done? Well, they have smuggled in poison gas as part of a plot to overthrow the Republic, and they seem to be building up troops beyond what the Treaty of Versailles allows them to do. So, Catfish, you've got a sexy singer who betrays everybody versus some nationalists who have smuggled in poison gas. Who is the worst?
Okay, so it's someone who has been participated in smuggling in gold versus somebody who has participated in smuggling in poison gas. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we have to figure it out.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is, I think I'm going to side on the people who are dealing with poison gas as far as who's the worst.
Double M?
I'm in total agreement. Just the name Seegers makes me think that Bob is probably running around somewhere and screaming, "Why did you use that name?"
Night moves. That's 3 for 3. We're going to go against these nationalists, these members of the Reichswehr, who have smuggled in poison gas as part of their plot to overthrow the evil people who allow representative government. So they go into round 8 versus the Russian embassy and the Stalinists, the secret police, who murdered all those Trotsky supporters, caught one and tortured him, and seemingly has killed and covered up their crime. So, Double M, what do you think? You want to go with the German nationalists or the Russian secret police?
This is a tough one. If they were Lenin's people, because Trotsky did have problems with Lenin as well. If they were Lenin's people, I might give the Germans a break. But because it is Stalin's people, I'm going to go with the Reichswehr once again.
Oh, the German nationalists. All right, Catfish. The Russians or the far-right Germans? Who's the worst?
I think, we're here, this is 2020 and we're in the United States. Aren't we supposed to be approving of all things Russians do these days? I'm going to go with the Germans and the bad guys.
You never know who listens to these podcasts, So the Germans are going into the final round, and this is a final round. Catfish, you may have noticed that as we go deeper, the characters even become worse and worse and worse. And so this is our final round 9 in our March Madness of Who's the Worst. We're going to take the Reichswehr, those nationalist far-right Germans who smuggled in poison gas as part of a plot to overthrow the Republic. And who are they up against? They're up against young cop Janicke's good friend Rudy. And what did Rudy do? He made moves on Charlotte after he learned his buddy was interested in her. So, all right, Catfish, who's the worst? The Reichswehr or Rudy?
I mean, listen, using poison gas is a crime against humanity. But it's a faceless, nameless humanity, not a buddy. Okay? It's Rudy, number one public enemy.
Oh, my goodness. All right, Double M, what's the verdict? Who's the worst? This is for all the worst.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than a bleep blocker. So, yeah, Rudy's definitely the worst.
Oh, my God. I can't believe it. All he did was make the moves and hit up a girl that his buddy liked and had a huge crush on. Where's the crime?
It is a crime to some people, Bubba.
Okay. Team Rudy. Rudy.
Oh, no. Oh.
Listeners, we've had this silly bit of fun. Write to us and tell us who you think is the worst here in Babylon, Berlin, in 1929, Berlin, Germany. Once again, at Double PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/Double PHQ. So we have a couple questions that we're going to go around the horn and talk about, but I think because of Catfish's confusion, we do need to talk about this overarching story, the train car. And so who feels comfortable? Actually, why don't we do this? Catfish, why don't we come to you and you describe what you think happened with the train car, and then we'll go to Double Ebb and then me, and we'll see if we can all come to some agreement with what the hell is going on. So Catfish, what is going on with this train?
Okay, so some group of people were trying to smuggle in gold to get it to Istanbul, to get it to their buddy so that he could make a comeback. Okay? Now, mysteriously, on this very same train, a different group of people were smuggling in poison gas. And then what happened was, when the train got stopped, the people who were smuggling in the gold, in the person of Svetlana, went and changed the numbers on the trains so that the train that had the poison gas in it was the one that got pulled aside instead of the one with gold, and they opened up the one with the poison gas instead.
Catfish, that's exactly what happened. Double M, do you want to go any further into this?
But it seems quite a crazy coincidence.
Well, we'll get to that in a second, possibly. Double M, any thoughts?
No.
He just has general frustration towards me, it sounds like, which is understandable.
No. Listen, this is possibly cleared up in the next 1 or 2 episodes. But what I would say, listeners, if you're a bit confused, is you have to think about there were 2 things that needed to be accomplished by Svetlana. Let's put her as the criminal mastermind. She needed to get the gold out of Russia. And the second part was she needed to smuggle it in to Berlin. So those are 2 distinct factions, 2 distinct actions that she needs. Well, who can smuggle gold out of Russia? Certainly the Stalinists and the people in charge aren't going to let you sneak gold out. They're going to grab it and take it for themselves. So who does she seduce and work with in Russia? She seduces the unkillable Kardakov and gets in with the Trotsky supporters and says, hey, if you smuggle this gold out of Russia, we can give it to Trotsky in Istanbul, even though she ain't going to do that at all, right? She's trying to route the train to Paris. So that's how you get it out of Russia. But how do you get it into Germany and through Germany? You need somebody who knows something about smuggling stuff into Germany. Well, what's a group that knows how to smuggle stuff into Germany? Obviously the Reichswehr, who has a lot of support of these military people like General Seegers. So they are always smuggling stuff in. So what is Svetlana's relationship with the birthmark face Nyssen? Obviously, she's using him to figure out, okay, what's a train that you're getting to come in that can bypass customs and stuff and won't get checked? Oh, you're having one of your trains come in there? Oh, well, if I attach the gold train to that, it can get through to Berlin fine. And of course, what's comical is Svetlana's plan would have totally worked if she hadn't blown it. She goes to the train depot and says, oh, no, this train isn't going to Istanbul, it's going to Paris. But of course, who's there? One of those Trotsky people who overtook the train and like, no, this is going to Istanbul. This is going to Istanbul. Svetlana breaks and pulls out a gun, which remember, there's very strict gun control here at that time. And suddenly the police are like, wait, what's going on here? And the police stop everything and pull all the cars into that building. Now, she was smart. She did switch the number on the train cars, but she kind of blew it. If she had somehow just waited a bit or later came up with her, hey, this train needs to go to Paris instead of Istanbul, she would have gotten away with it. So maybe Svetlana is the worst. And that is what's going on with this insane train plot.
Sounds like you've laid it out there pretty well. You got it?
So she just wants the money? She just wants the gold?
Catfish, you've seen Svetlana. What do you think she wants?
I don't know. Better mustache, maybe.
Listen, you got to buy some mustache wax. All right, well, let's get...
Oh, man. Okay, so she was... This was the thing I really honestly did not understand what Svetlana wanted to do. I thought she was with people, and then I thought she was with other people. I never quite realized that she was just in for herself, so I didn't understand her motivations at all.
Let me say this is a bit like those, I talked about hard-boiled detective noir with these ridiculously complex plots. This is part of that ridiculously complex part. And it keeps getting and spiraling out of control. We've seen the Russian embassy and the Stalinists. They tortured that guy. And now they know that gold is on the train too. Kardakov, because he doesn't have any choices or options right now, all his fellow Trotsky supporters have been murdered. What does he do? He goes to the Armenian and tells him about the gold. And so you can possibly see how this is, once again, going to spin more out of control as so many factions know about different variants on this train as we go forward. I think it's time, though, we do get to these questions. And so the first question is about TV shows, and this is a TV series. Catfish pointed this out in our last podcast. You look at this show, and you have two lead heroes, our man, Detective Rath, and our female hero protagonist, Charlotte. In a show like this, they would become a couple, right? That's how it works. I want to know from you guys, how do you feel about Rath and Charlotte becoming a couple? Is anybody team Ratlot? Rath knows Charlotte sold him out to Wolter and was spying on him, told his addiction to Wolter. Plus, he seems to be in love with his brother's widow. And Charlotte, she not only has Rudy, but she also has young Detective Janicke mooning for her. So how do you guys feel? Let's go to you first, Double M. Do you want our two heroes to hook up and become the couple that a TV show would suggest they are going to become?
Well, as long as it isn't as disastrous as Ross and Rachel, then I'm probably okay with it. But things are really complicated right now. Do they have time for a love story in the midst of this? Longing from afar? Maybe. I don't know.
How about you, Catfish? What do you think? Do you feel any sparks between them? What do you think?
I mean, I did want them to get together at the beginning only because we were following him, and she's a very interesting character. I mean, I feel like at this point, I'd just be really disappointed in her if she settled for this putz.
What if she marries Rudy?
She listen, anybody is better. As we don't know, Wolter is better. Anybody is better than Rath. I'm not even sure. There must be a good reason why the mob kept him alive. I don't understand why. But he definitely does not deserve... He doesn't deserve Charlotte in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, wow. Catfish, you got to our second question. How in the world, here at the end of episode 8, the first season, how did Rath survive the priest who was coming to kill him? It doesn't seem possible.
Well, and also, how did he survive? I mean, they had him in their clutches. It only makes sense is if the bad guy thinks that Rath is going to owe him something or he can use him somehow. Otherwise, why did he keep him alive?
Great question.
Sorry, this brings up another question, another weird thing that happened here. I guess you could say it was a misdirect, but it was such a multi-episode misdirect that it was really weird. And that is, they give what we presume are bad poisoning medications. They tell the pharmacist that Rath gets his medications from. Next time he comes, this is what you're going to give him. So for like 2 episodes, I'm thinking, it was at least 2 episodes, they already had the homeless bum in the prison cells, and I thought, see, look, he's going to get this, he's going to give it to that dude, and that dude's going to die. That whole weird subplot ended up having no closure, no end to it.
Well, actually, Catfish, I feel like that when you listen to Dr. Schmidt's lecture to the other doctors, and he's talking about the substance that he's using to prep these patients for the process of going through hypnosis, then you understand exactly what they're doing. It sets up that scene with his hand over Rath at the end of the season perfectly, because he's been giving him that exact same drug, that barium sulfate or whatever it is. I'm not sure exactly what it was called.
He's got him there now. So in other words, like, the whole point of that medication, the whole point of them giving him that medication was that we're not going to be able to get our hands on him, so we're going to get to him through getting the medication to his pharmacist. At the end, they have their hands on him, so the whole thing they did there didn't make any sense, because we never actually saw him take the medication that was different.
That's correct. We haven't seen him take it yet. That's a good point.
I just took it from the doctor's explanation that this is the substance that's going to, and since you see Krychek in the film and everything, I just figured that this is not a bad thing. It's a prep for the hypnosis or whatever it is that he's attempting
right, but
to do.
But in other words, the whole thing that's set up is again. I thought I was smart, and so fine. They misdirect me. That's fine. I'm smart. I'm like, he's going to take this medication. The guy is jonesing so hard in the jail. He's going to give him that medication. The guy's going to die. He's going to have no way now to get the information. So fine, they do a misdirect there, but they spend all this time like with this medication, and I think it's going to be important. And here we are at the end of quote unquote season 1, and not only is it not important, but they've already got their hands on him, so they can do whatever they want to him.
No, these are Catfish. These are good points. I would go back to my original question, and if listeners haven't proceeded past these first 8 episodes, they may wonder what's going on there, and how did Rath? My original question: how did he survive the priest? I will say this becomes one of the fun, if I could dare use the word, revelations of season 2. Some get revealed real early in season 2, and some don't get revealed until the very end. But that is certainly fun. Is that okay to say, Matt? You've seen the whole Double M. You've seen the whole series. Is that too spoilery, or what do you think?
Nah, I think that's a pretty safe way to explain it for sure.
All right, now Double M, you had a question you wanted to ask the group. Do you want to throw it out?
So we kept hearing amongst the Reichswehr, we kept hearing this when they were out at Nyssen's mother's house. We kept hearing this phrase called Prangertag. So I did Bubba was so efficient with his wiki research in the last episode. I went ahead and did some of that for myself, because that it just seemed like that exercise of why would they give it that name? What does that name mean? Prangertag in German means Pillory Day, which is actually a holiday celebrated on the Thursday after the Trinity Sunday, Corpus Christi. It's set 60 days after Easter. So if we've just had the May Day, 60 days would probably be after that, right? So what does this Prangertag actually refer to? Is it the exercise at the Nyssen house, or is it something further on down the line?
Catfish, thoughts? You of German descent, any thoughts?
9.
9.
That's retaliation for my poo-pooing on his explanation of Sveta earlier.
Listen,
No, that's it. Listen, if I knew what was going on, I'd be able to contribute more.
well, let's get to stuff you can contribute on, Catfish. The final 2 questions.
Let's see.
The final 2 questions are simple. Who do you feel like? We mentioned on the last podcast, or maybe we just mentioned this after we stopped recording the last podcast, is these are a lot of actors that we're not familiar with. These are performers from Germany, you would assume, and based on what we've seen. Catfish, You're a great actor. Who do you feel is giving the best performance? Who's the best actor amongst this group of German actors?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I mean, it's the characters. I don't find there's some people that maybe could be more interesting. I mean, I don't find that the Momster that interesting. Obviously, I find Wolter's to be fascinating. I mean, all joking aside, he seemed like a very stereotypical, just ultra bad cop out for himself. But he does a lot of things in the back half of the first season. He's trying to figure out what Rath wants from him. That's what he's concerned about. He's concerned that Rath is looking over his shoulder trying to get him in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
And when he finds out that's not the case, again, I mean, if he really was a bad partner or only cared about himself, he would have just stayed outside the club instead of going into the club. I mean, he does a lot of things that make him kind of more of an interesting character. I do also find Svetlana to be interesting. The guy that Greta is the housemaid for. Is that her name, Greta?
Yeah, Greta's a housemaid. We haven't even talked about her yet. She is Charlotte's friend.
Her boss, that guy, he seemed very cool.
Yeah, Benda, good, okay.
Yeah. So I think the acting is uniformly good. I wish we could see more of the. I don't know. I want to call them fantasy elements, but the wilder elements, like just more music, more songs, and the dancing and stuff like that is really makes it interesting. And we kind of lost that part of it. The rest of season 1.
Double M, who do you believe is the best actor or actress, best performer on this show?
See, that's a really hard question to ask because I did watch this with the whole bit of the voiceovers going on at the same time as the subtitles.
Okay. And
you can't rely on the voice actors to be able to accurately give you what the dialogue is in the same way that you would if you understood it in German with an actor or actresses. I will say that as far as expressiveness goes, Lisa Livfried, is that her name? The actress who plays Charlotte?
Yeah, that's her.
She's more expressive facially, which helps sell both that terrible, terrible voice actor that did her voice the whole season and the subtitles especially.
I would beg anybody, if you can. It's just no one is going to do as good a job as the original actors. Just read and listen to the original actors if you can for anything.
Catfish, will take a quick aside here. You're an actor. Have you ever heard yourself dubbed in different versions of your shows you've been on? Movies you've been in?
Yeah. It happens to everybody. Sometimes they'll bring you in, which is nice because you get a little extra money. Yeah, I've heard it, and it sounds very strange, and it's very disconcerting. And that's just really for sides. I haven't heard myself dubbed in another language. That would be fascinating. But just when they have some voice actors cover something that was garbled, or if it's just kind of an aside, it's disconcerting, to say the least.
My vote for Best Actor, I think they're all doing a great job, but I am going to go with this wonderful actress portraying Charlotte. And I just think to myself, boy, if her English is pretty good, and I've seen her on the Stars show Counterpoint, if her English is pretty good, and it seems good on that show, boy, she could have a great career. But they're all very strong. Our final question we're going to cover before we jump into the music and then end with some of these plots, these millions of plots they're bouncing around, is probably the toughest question of all. We pointed out in our first podcast that this is 1929. The Nazis, as we've been going through this, the Nazis don't really seem to be in this at all. Or if they are, they're possibly related to the Reichswehr, but we haven't seen a bunch of people with swastikas. So I'm going to ask this terrible, terrible question, and I'm going to come to you first, Catfish. Which one of these characters do you see most likely becoming a Nazi?
Oh boy. I mean, already I'm getting a very strong Nazi vibe from Strawberry Face.
Which storyline is Strawberry Face involved with?
Well, Strawberry Face is the guy who brought in the gas.
Oh, okay.
Nyssen?
Nyssen.
Okay, yeah.
Nyssen. No, we're going to call him Strawberry Face from now on. That's Nyssen with the birthmark. I love that. Excellent.
Yeah, he definitely. I mean, already, I'll pick him to be high up in the chain of command.
Well, if he does become a Nazi, that would be perfect because he seems so neutered. He's wearing those traditional German clothes in front of the military. His mom's mansion, it's not his mansion, and so I love that. Any guesses from you, Double M, of which of these characters, if any, might become Nazis?
Ooh, boy, it's probably still a few years down the line for him, right? Probably 3 or 4 years.
Let's hope none of them do.
Well, I was going to say it depends on if any of them are alive by that time. That might be another question. But I think, boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I'm going to go with Charlotte's older sister. She seems like she could if she can handle her husband, she can handle just about anything.
Oh man, that is a tough one, Double M. I have watched all 3 seasons, and so I know a couple of answers, but I'm going to go off the board. And I think the most painful thing that would be is if it depends how subversive this show is. But if our lead detective Rath became a Nazi, oh boy, would that be painful to see. Listeners, write in, even if you've seen these first 3, and tell us if you think anybody or if you want one of these characters to show how easy it is to slip down the deep and dark wrong path. Once again, at PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, facebook.com/PHQ. We're going to jump into all these crazy storylines in a bit, but one of the things that I love, I know our listeners love, is when we have our professional, our touring musician, Double M Matt Murdoch, jump in and talk about some of this great music we're hearing, even if it's not our girl Svetlana belting it out at the Armenians Club. Matt, why don't you take us through some of this great music we heard in these episodes?
Yeah, I don't want to go through a whole spiel, which might take 20 minutes if I did, but I do want to comment this. We mentioned at the top of the podcast that Johnny Klimek, who has worked with Tom Tykwer for 20 years on just about everything that they've worked on together, and they kind of have. There's a great interview called Behind the Audio, and I don't know, Bubba, if you could put this link for the YouTube interview in there, that'd probably be really helpful for our listeners. Okay. To kind of get a sense that Mr. Klimek and Tykwer really work well together because they've gone through all the having to explain stuff to each other, and they kind of have this own shorthand of theirs. And all of this music, which is pretty different, this show is so serialized, but typically the kind of approach that Klimek and Tykwer usually use is much more for a procedural type of thing, where all of the music is essentially finished before the editing is done or before Klimek even sees a lot of stuff, and then they kind of go back and they fill in a couple of cuts afterwards. Some of those cuts were done. There was a gentleman by the name of Brian Ferryman, who you'll see on the end credits of every episode, a professional jazz musician who donated 13 of his songs from his upcoming album to be used on this thing. Well, boy, that's a tough one. Donate so that you get heard, so that you get royalties. That was a pretty fantastic play by Mr. Ferryman. But some of those were on there as well. But the score itself was pretty much composed by concept. And then,
what do you mean by that? What does that mean by concept?
Well, in a typical serialized show, say a Lost or Game of Thrones or other things that we're familiar with, Giacchino or Ramin Djawadi typically write character themes or sometimes conceptual themes, but they integrate different things with each episode. Whereas here, you have Klimek and Tykwer, mostly Klimek composing it, and then Tykwer just sprinkling it into the show with actually things that are just titled by concept. Berliner Luft is Berlin Air. Dunkel's Babble is Dark Babylon. Precision, translated into precision. Fuga, which means gap. And Nachtlied, or night song. Hetzjagd, which is chase. All of these are just kind of things that anytime there was a chase, like for Hetzjagd, if you watch the very first episode of this show, when Rath is chasing Krajewski on the rooftops, you hear this theme. You hear the running woodwinds and everything. You hear that exact same thing in the third episode when Rath finds Miss Elizabeth tied up, and then the train guy comes in looking for him. And these kind of things are just done even without any kind of real variation. And they're just placed in the same way that you'd hear a lot of times the same theme placed in, like, say, an episode of Scorpion on CBS. You know, it's just like, oh, here's the We're Excited music, and so they put in the same cue. The one difference is, and this is kind of remarkable, is that Klimek would actually send everything to Tikwer by tracks. And so he would, because of that, sometimes Tikwer would do a little bit of composing on his own and mix tracks together. Oh. A track from here or a track from there. And that's why, especially in a piece like Berliner Luft, it's that main theme. It's got that two-note motive in it that you hear throughout the whole series. You know, that whole thing with the prepared piano. It's something that Tikwer actually took this synth track and put underneath just that part of it. And in another place, in another episode, you hear a fully orchestrated version, which is the way it was originally recorded. It's just that Tikwer had the different clarinets or the different string parts or whatever separate, and he just separated that piano part out, and you hear a lot of that. There's just all these different kinds of variations that Tikwer did with mixing as opposed to new cuts being made, which I guess saves money. It also, if done in the hands of somebody like Tom Tikwer, who is pretty brilliant composer himself, can work just as effectively. But it did bother me, and that's one of the reasons why my episode rating for the season went down. It did bother me a little bit just to hear the exact same thing in two different occasions, and no real personality added to it like I'm used to from a Giacchino or from a Ramin Djawadi.
Double M, that is brilliant. To be honest, I want to take a sample of what you just played. And anytime Catfish says something wrong about the plot, we're just going to sample that.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so there he goes again. Okay, guys, now it's time to jump into the storylines, and it is ridiculous, all the various storylines that we talk about. After 2 episodes, we were like, well, there's really only 3 stories. Rath looking for the photographs of the mayor of Cologne, there was the train car storyline, and there was Charlotte's attempt to find some money and become a cop. This show, after those first 2 episodes, explodes into hundreds, it feels like, of storylines. But let's once again go ahead and cover them kind of briefly and just walk through them. And the first one I want to talk about is the one that seems to wrap up. Rath trying to find these photos and negatives to end the blackmail. So he does a million things, and sure up, where are they? They're in the Armenian safe in his nightclub. He has that drug addict, former cop with the shakes. His first name may be Franz, so that's how I always wrote him in the notes. Franz points them to the Armenian's office, and he says, the moon, I forget how he described it, the moons, the stars, and that allows Rath to find the key. And then we end up into a standoff as Rath tries to get all of the stuff out of the club while holding the Armenian hostage.
With Wolter's help. Could not have gotten out without Wolter's.
Exactly right. So they go and they decide to have a stag party where they watch all the dirty films, and it comes to the final film, the final slide, where Rath is like, okay, here, let's see the mayor of Cologne in this naughty, naughty film. And of course, when he watches the film, it's not the mayor of Cologne. It's his father in it. His father had lied to him and sent him to Berlin to get this film. And so Rath decides, screw it. I'm not returning home to Cologne, Dad. I'm staying here in Berlin. The end. What do you guys think about this shocking, quote-unquote, revelation? Catfish, what do you think?
It was even more shocking when I read your notes.
Wait,
and
what?
I realized, when I read your notes, and I realized that it was his father.
That terrible dad. What about you, Double M? What do you think?
I think it was a nice twist to find out that it was all just a shell game in the beginning. And I guess we're supposed to take away that Rath didn't know this until he saw the film.
Dad
I didn't know
in
until
a dirty
I
film.
read Bubba's notes.
Catfish. Well, let's get to it. Do you want to see your dad in a dirty film? Yes or no?
I want to be like Wolters. Oh my God, I just played cards with that guy. Great.
It just begs so many questions. It's like, was Rath's mother still alive at the time that this was done? Or was it at a time after she had departed? Because, of course, the son that she wanted didn't come home, and the son that she didn't want did.
The real question is, does it really make sense? Like, to me, if he's got the hots for his brother's wife, and I guess he's got some guilt because he let his brother die on the battlefield rather than going out and getting shot himself, so fine. He's quote-unquote missing. But I feel like this would free him up to be like, okay, I'm going to live my life. Instead of like, okay, now I'm going to punish myself by not going back to the woman I love. You know what I mean? Like, it's played as like kind of a freeing thing, but he's kind of punishing himself, which is weird.
No, I could see that a bit. What I want to jump to is you're talking about the woman he loves. This ending.
Well, which one?
Right, exactly. This ending where he's chased by the priest and he's obviously been drugged and possibly hypnotized, and yet he somehow makes it home alive. And who's there for him? Charlotte. And he snaps on her. Get away! Go away! You know, that's not cool, dude. Yeah, she spied on you for Wolter and told Wolter about your drug addiction and all sorts of stuff, but man, that was ugly. So maybe he should end up with his brother's wife. Maybe that's what he deserves.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I haven't really seen her yet. You know, I mean, the landlady's not much to look at. So
Miss
whoever...
Elizabeth, hey.
Come on. Miss Elizabeth, she's all right, man.
I mean, she's all right.
Listeners, write us and tell us what you think about Miss Elizabeth.
She's all right, but she's not fine.
Oh, man. That's tough. That's listeners. Once again, write us and tell us what you think about Miss Elizabeth.
You know, I'm sorry. I was mean to Elizabeth. I'm gonna give her a compliment. She has very strong German features.
You're part German, dude. Come on.
Which I always find attractive in a lady.
There go all our downloads in Deutschland. We apologize. Well, Catfish, you've already talked about. Certainly, we've got to follow Rath following these dirty photos story. Then we also have to learn about his life and his history and how, sure enough, he was kind of scared shitless on the battlefield, but he still ran out to get his brother, and yet it didn't help because the French took him prisoners, and then he was screwed. R.I.P. Anno, Rath's brother.
But maybe here's something that I had assumed one thing, and then I assumed another, and maybe I'm wrong, so I just want to clear this up. So first I thought, okay, they're making fun of all these Shakers because they just came back with PTSD and people don't understand. And then as the poison gas storyline developed, I thought, oh no crap, maybe all these people were exposed to poison gas.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but I don't understand, like, I mean, it's bad enough to make fun of someone because you don't know about PTSD, but why would they be making fun of people who were affected, who have neurological problems because they were hit with nerve gas?
Isn't that ugly? I think really that scene is just to show you how ugly it was. Here, these are your veterans. These are your soldiers who are fighting for your country. And the people in that auditorium, as Dr. Schmidt is talking, are like, they're losers. They lost the war. Good riddance. Oh, I just thought it was to show what kind of a-holes people could be. Any thoughts, Double M?
No, I totally agree. It was there was clearly, and I think that probably it's fairly historically accurate. Unfortunately, it's like there was clearly, I would say, a small majority of people who really had decided, not just the Reichswehr, but just day-to-day people and people who especially had money, who felt like that letting the liberals in lost them the war, and that these people certainly weren't there to help. You know, if these people had done what they'd done, or what they were supposed to do, if they'd have gotten their gas masks on in time, if they'd have done this, or if they just bucked up like the rest of us did, we would have won, and all of this would be for naught. You know, we wouldn't have to be doing things.
Or knocked.
doing things
Nacht. Alles for Nacht.
Anyway, I feel like, I feel like that this sentiment was a fairly accurate depiction, and we faced it ourselves. I mean,
that's true.
Look at the way that we've treated Vietnam veterans for years.
No, that's true. In my infamous Wikipedia research, I found out that one of the things was that the German press in the war and before the war was so controlled. And so everybody back home had been always receiving these messages about, hey, we're winning the war, we're doing great, the German military is the greatest military in the world. And of course they believed it. But then, of course, the military's getting its butt kicked. The Kaiser pretty much steps down because he's been incompetent and he's lost the war. And it's the people who have to step in and clean up the mess. That's right, the Republic, the Democrats, the people coming in to say, hey, let's have elections and represent ourselves, who are getting all the blame. Similarly, these soldiers are getting all the blame when, if you got gassed, give me a break. It's terrible what happens in that auditorium. I completely agree. So now we've talked about Rath. Let's go to all of the storylines that spill out in these insane 8 first episodes. We already talked about Catfish's double, Wolter, the crooked cop. So we got to pay attention to what's going on with him, too. So, number one, there's the May Day rally where he really spins some stories. Now, he does a great job. He's probably one of the reasons. He probably saves Rath for the first time there, where they accidentally end up on a street which the cops are shooting up. But sure enough, he is going to tell a fake story about what happened at the May Day rally. He also must be pretty crooked because we see young cop Janicke snooping through Wolter's desk, trying to find things, and he's reporting those findings to political police chief Benda, the guy with the glasses. We later see Janicke spying on a lunch where Major Seegers, part of these far-right nationalists, is at, and Janicke's trying to read lips, and he reads the word, he believes he sees the word assassination. The season kind of ends, but before the big fight with the priest, the season kind of gets to a point where Wolter seems to be holding a meeting for the Reichswehr, these far-right people who want to take over the government. And he's got the little boy talking about the great battle. And one thing I found kind of fascinating was that when Wolter starts reading out the names of his comrades in the army who died in World War I, some of the names of the people he mentioned, I know people here in the United States with those same last names, and they're of Jewish faith here. And so it was very interesting. Rath seems to have his thumbs and fingers in the cookie jar. We know Catfish loves him. Wolter has his fingers in the cookie jar. We know Catfish loves Wolter. Double M, any thoughts you have about Wolter, the crooked cop?
Well, I found it awfully convenient that he managed to schedule his showing of arms to the rest of the Black Reichswehr right before Rath arrived, evidently, because he was not there for that meeting. They timed that well. That was really gratuitous television right there. But I think that as far as Wolter goes, I think Catfish has made some good points, because you see this guy, you say, okay, well, everything on the outside says that he's pretty much dirty, but he's also, you think about it, he just wanted, when he confronted Rath about being a trembler, he actually just kind of blew it off and took him out for some drinks. So I like a complex character like Wolter. I don't like him, but I like the fact that he's complex.
Catfish, you want to stand up for your boy?
Hashtag misunderstood hero.
Well, okay, so we learn more about him.
I look forward to, you guys may have watched this series past where I've watched it. So, you have already experienced the amazing transformation that I'm sure he's about to go through to become the lead of the show.
It's great.
But yeah, don't spoil it for me.
We won't. We mentioned that he seems to be part of this group, the Reichswehr, which seems to be led by old German military leaders who want the monarchy to return by any means necessary. Our lead in this storyline is, as Catfish calls him, is it Strawberry Face?
Yeah, Strawberry Face.
Strawberry Face Nyssen, who I say he's a Svetlana stan, and he claims, oh, no, these train cars of mine are just pesticides. Sure right, buddy. We've already mentioned that he's at his mansion. Whoop, strike that. His mama's mansion. And he's holding these festivities, and he's got Seegers there, and he's got Colonel Wendt there, and they don't care anything about the Treaty of Versailles. And after this poison gas gets revealed on the train car, political police chief Benda, he tells Rath that it was an illegal import of warfare agents. And he wants Rath, who admittedly is just in town to get these photos, to stay on the case, and that Nyssen is the one financing these evildoers. Nyssen is arrested. Benda questions him. He says no, and then, like a good strawberry face, he's stripped and thrown in prison. So here we have the SOBs bringing in poison gas. Boy, wasn't poison gas outlawed after World War I? What's going on?
They also made sure that he didn't struggle any strawberries in with him, if you know what I mean.
Did a little check. Yes, they did. Can I just say this about Nyssen, and that is, I find him to be a very sympathetic character in a lot of ways, especially in this season. I see a lot of myself in him. He's a guy who runs around like a rock star, but really he's just living on mommy's money all the time. That's pretty much me.
Matt, come on.
For a long time as a musician, that's the way I was. Not so much now. But the whole idea of this Nyssen character, doesn't he seem like, I mean, he may come across as a leader, but was he there during that all-important meeting at Walter's? No, that was strictly for military personnel. So is Nyssen a dupe? Is he the Oswald of this? Ooh.
Oh man, that's good history right there. Your thoughts, Catfish? Is Nyssen a dupe?
I mean, when you're grabbing your ankles and wincing, it doesn't feel like you're on top of the world.
He can smuggle poison gas into Germany. He can't smuggle anything into the prison. Right. So let's talk about some of the other plot lines. So we have the train car storyline, and this is with the indestructible Kardakov. And I thought, this is the character I tended to sympathize with the most. He goes to Svetlana's apartment. He's choking her. He knows she betrayed him. But then she bats her eyes at him, and he's like, "Oh, I love you." What a buffoon. She, once again, calls the Russian embassy to get him taken out. They're too inept to do it. She shoots him. Hey, it's good. It's great. I should win. But, of course, he had a notebook in his breast pocket, which took most of the brunt of the bullet. And somehow Kardakov survives. He doesn't have any help. He goes to the mobster, the Armenian, says, "Hey, there's gold here, trust me." So they break into the police-guarded train cars. He goes to the train number. He thinks this is the gold.
Kardakov is good. I mean, listen, he's nigh unkillable. But don't leave your important books around. That's all I'm saying. He goes out the window and just leaves his book, his full confession behind for Charlotte to find.
Well, listen.
He was too busy making a fist to save the book at the time.
How about this? He was thinking to himself, "Oh, I got to go get my violin before Miss Elizabeth rents out my room."
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well.
See, that's just how involved Kardakov is. He's so involved. He's given up his true passion for another true passion. He's totally given up on music, doesn't care about it, figures he's going to Istanbul. I'll just leave this behind. It's a nice little tip for Miss Elizabeth, because who knows how much that violin is worth, probably all of, 1 mark. And, I don't know. Musicians typically totally treasure their instruments, so he must have known that his career as a musician was over when he left that behind.
Charlotte has started her work as an unofficial police detective. She goes to the apartment. She finds this. She and Rath go out to a nightclub where they discover the location of the Trotsky's headquarters, the print shop. And then when Rath is pulled to Wolter's party, she and Janicke go to the print shop, and she's learning stuff. As I believe it was you, Catfish, who said she's the best police detective of any of these knuckleheads.
Mm-hmm.
And she is discovering things. She and Janicke discover the crime scene, which has been completely cleaned. Good work, evil Soviet secret police. And it ends with Svetlana going to Nyssen and seemingly about to tell him her treachery. Any other thoughts on the train car, guys?
Well, thank goodness for Janicke, who is the only person who thought to look for a print king. I think that's what they call it, the sheet that was left in the printer. Because as smart as Charlotte was as she grew throughout this season, if it hadn't been for that, I don't think they'd be on to anything yet.
Oh, good point. A storyline we haven't talked too much about, but this is a real event called Bloody May in German history, and it is these May Day demonstrations. And so Wikipedia research real quick. The Weimar government in 1928 lifted the ban on public speeches given by Adolf Hitler. What happened next after they allowed Hitler to start making public speeches again?
Not good things.
He gave another speech and there was a riot. So the government said, okay, we're going to ban all public political speeches and rallies. And that, of course, included the May Day, the International Workers' Day. That was a demonstration planned by the unions and the German Communist Party. In real-life history, Bloody May saw 33 civilians shot and killed by a security force of up to 13,000 armed police. Ooh. This leads us into these poor women on the balcony who are shot. And Rath, who's supposed to be our hero, he goes along with the cover-up story, even though his partner there at Miss Elizabeth's rental facility is the lefty journalist Kattelbach. And everything's going terrible. One thing that does happen in this storyline is that Rath can't write the fake report. He's like, I can't do it. But he's going to have to be, put on the spot. He's going to have to come up and do it. Will our hero Rath tell the truth about what happened? Or is he going to think about his career and say, okay, got to cover it up? What do you think, Double M?
Ooh, I know this one, so go ahead, Catfish.
Oh, no, he's a complete sellout. We've already seen this. He has got no moral backbone. He sold his soul more than Charlotte has sold her body. Hashtag Wolters was right.
If you can get that trending, Catfish, I will tip my German hat with a feather in it to you. Okay, we talked about Charlotte. Charlotte is, she's a modern woman. She should have fun, right? She is fooling around with Rudy. She's leading on Janicke. She's really smart. One of the things we didn't talk about is when they find the body of this tortured train conductor, Trotsky train conductor, when Rudy there at the morgue says, well, he had coal in his lungs, and she looks at it and this dead guy's hands are soft. She goes, oh, well, he wasn't a coal miner. His hands would be rough if he was a coal miner. He worked at the railway. She is smart, and she's willing to do anything to find out the truth, including fake being a cop and fake being part of the press. You are on Team Charlotte and Team Wolter, I believe, Catfish. Any final thoughts about Charlotte, our young protege?
Yeah. It says hashtag Team Chalter. Let's get these two. Let's get these two together.
Crazy kids together.
Yeah, let's get these two crazy kids together. Both of them live in the real world, not the fantasy world.
Good point.
So they need to be together. I'm fascinated by Charlotte. There are so many storylines here, and although she was involved with some of them, I'd like to see more of Charlotte. To be honest with you, less of Rath and more of Charlotte.
I think everybody probably feels that
episodes. Way. Yeah, including in that little leather getup she wore once.
She's lovely. We will agree with that. Then yet a final storyline let's talk about, and it's one that seems to be pretty unrelated to everything right now, and that's Charlotte's friend Greta. We've barely talked about her at all. Charlotte runs into an old friend of hers begging for work there on Alexanderplatz in Berlin. Greta's poor. She's taking leftover change from the table because she needs something. She doesn't have a place to stay. She seems to sleep on the trolley that's going through town. Greta can't go work in the sex dungeon because it seems like she had a C-section and it's inflamed. Ooh, is that what it is, guys? Why couldn't Greta take a job there? Or is she just too innocent, for lack of a better word? What do you think?
I think just the stitching and the scars itself, she felt like she wouldn't be appealing, regardless of whether it was inflamed or not. She just felt really, really ugly at that time and unable to be a member of the Mocha FT Underground, which was really sad. But at the same time, she's stealing a good waiter's tips, so do we root for her or not?
Oh, let's put her in the Who's the Worst.
Yeah, we should have. I thought that it was just that she was she just couldn't live that way. Not that she's a prude, but maybe just more, respectable, which there is nothing wrong with being a respectable person.
After stealing a waiter's tips.
Right. Yes, that was not good. I'll cop to that for sure. But obviously, her physical situation has something to do with it. I mean, she's interesting, and again, I like the dynamic. Her beer and sausage fest with her boss
Benda,
was interesting. Yeah. Again, sadly, it took time away from Charlotte. I'd like to see more Charlotte. That's all.
The other thing happening in Greta's life, besides her becoming a housekeeper there at Political Police Chief Benda and his seemingly OCD wife, iron this newspaper. No, the dish has to be laid at this angle on the table. Look, she's working her tush off, but she seems to fall into a relationship with this guy, Fritz. She seemingly meets him when she's at the lake or the river there, and Fritz and his buddy Otto, I believe his name is, pull her into a boat, and she's from somebody who had nothing, who was homeless, and now she's got a job and seemingly is living at Benda's house, and she's got a man. Things are looking up for Greta. Spoiler alert, you know how this show goes. Any other thoughts about Greta? Sorry, go Double M.
Oh, I was just going to say, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, she's struck gold here. She's found her pot of gold at the end of the rainbow with the leprechaun and everything. So, because she definitely looks, nothing against Germans or generalizing them, but she looks more Irish than German to me for some reason.
Oh boy, we are really digging deep into Deutschland.
She's definitely an innocent, and Charlotte looks French to me, especially with the name Charlotte. Charlotte.
Lotte.
Okay, guys, it is time. At the end of every podcast here on Babylon Berlin Babble, where we babble on Berlin, we have awards to give out. So for season 1, we're going to name our Wolter of the week. This is somebody who lives the high life, who doesn't get dressed immediately after having fun. He's chilling and so far hanging out and being cool. Catfish, he's your boy. So who is your Wolter of the week?
Oh boy, that is a tough one. I mean, my Wolter of the week has to be Greta's boyfriend, her new beau.
Oh, Fritz. We saw Fritz a lot. We saw him at the post-May Day rally where the doctor was standing up and trying to get people riled up. Fritz mingled into that and said, hey, I want to sign up. Rath actually passed Fritz when he was going to the funeral of the women who died on the balcony. So Fritz is out there. So he's your Wolter of the week.
Yeah, Fritz out there, man. I mean, look at his life, man. He's chill. He's like, we don't need this boat. I got some food. I'll row you back. And Fritz is like, he believes in equal opportunity. He's like, I'm not rowing this damn boat by myself. Greta, you pick up that oar and you go, girl. Yeah. So that's gonna be my Wolters of the week.
Double M, do you have an option?
Well, Catfish has clearly exhibited his like for Wolter by explaining Fritz that way. I got to go the other way because, I'm not a Wolter fan, so I got to go real world once again. I'm going COVID-19 because just like Wolter, it's pretty damn nasty. It doesn't care whose face it gets in. You feel like you got to wash your hands constantly around them. COVID-19, my Wolter of the week.
Oh, Catfish, are you going to let that stand?
I mean, I feel like you need to go and watch that scene between him and Charlotte on a loop, where he sits there, practically licking his paws. He's practically licking his paws, Double M. He's so proud of himself.
Yeah.
All right, so my Wolter of the week is New England quarterback Tom Brady, who on St. Patrick's Day gave a big middle finger to all of Boston and decided to leave the Patriots. And he's going down to the beach. He's, him going down to the Tampa beach is a bit like Wolter going down to the Armenian's dungeon. The same thing. I'm going to go down there and Netflix and chill, literally. Tom Brady, my Wolter of the week. We also have another award in Catfish. Do you want to give this one out? For season 1, who is your sweet sice? I can't even say it. How do you say it?
Oh, it's the Scheisse?
Yes, the sweet Scheisse of season 1. Who are you going to give it to?
Well, what is our? I forgot already. What is our sort of qualifications for the sweet Scheisse? Isn't it something?
you exclaimed that when you first saw Charlotte in her dominatrix outfit.
Oh,
so.
Yes. All right. Well, I think my sweet Scheisse moment of the season has to be when our boy Rath realized that his dad liked to get down and dirty. That is a sweet Scheisse.
I don't have a nominee. Do you have one, Double M?
Well, I do. This person is so patient with Rath for constantly intruding into his dark room, and after seeing Wolter licking his paws, as Catfish said, after Charlotte, it sure was a delicious sight to see Graf in that red dress at Club Hollander.
Oh, yes, he was in drag, hanging out, having fun at the club. Photographer Graf doesn't know how to lock a darkroom. He's sweet Scheisse of season 1. Listeners, if you want to nominate somebody to be a Wolter or a sweet Scheisse, please, I've said it a million times, write to us at Double PH Twitter, at Double PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/Double PHQ. If you have a sweet Scheisse, and it can be the one that inspired it all, lovely Charlotte, putting on some leather, let us know. Facebook.com/Double PHQ. Gentlemen, our next podcast is going to cover the first 4 episodes of season 2, which are conveniently named episode 9, 10, 11, and 12. For everybody like Catfish who was like, what, this thing is too damn confusing, it's not coming together, what exactly is happening? I'm not saying you won't feel that, but I will say we are about to start reaching the fireworks factory, and we're going to get some fireworks across these next 4 that are really going to shake the foundation of the show, and that'll get us halfway through season 2. Join us then. Please subscribe on Double P. Sorry, Double M. Thoughts on the next 4?
I was just going to tell Catfish, it's like, hey, don't worry, man. It's like, you don't get this. They're going to do that hand wave thing way over to the left where they go, no, just look over here real quick.
Oh, great. I'm glad I bothered to pay attention to anything then.
No, it all pays off, brother. It just takes a while.
Catfish, how can people reach you on social media?
They can hit me up at CJGman67 on Twitter.
Double M.
You can find me at Musical Concepts, all one word, on Twitter.
My name's Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at FitandTrim. That's FITTENTRIM, at FitandTrim on Twitter. And we'll be babbling on Babylon Berlin Babble next time on
Babylon Berlin Babble on.
That was worse than a Le Batard C or no.
Babylon Berlin babbling on.
3, 2, 1.
Babylon Berlin
Babylon.
Babbling on.
Babylon Berlin Babble.
And in our post-credits, or in our credits scene, I'll go ahead and say, any thoughts, guys, why they named the show Babylon Berlin? Or, of course, it's named after a book. Why they named the book Babylon Berlin?
Well, it's obvious. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think of, the Tower of Babel. I just thought it was because there were so many different factions and groups of people who want different things. The idea is sort of this huge melting pot of different desires.
Double M, any thoughts?
Yeah, what he said.
I don't know much about Babylon, but I thought, well, that's a civilization that fell, and maybe this is a way to signal that this civilization we're watching of these fun roaring 20s in Berlin is going to fall to what we know it will. Listeners,
I like that. I like that even better.
Okay, listeners, write us and tell us. And please download, subscribe, and review the podcast. That helps other people find it. And we'll talk to you next week. Auf Wiedersehen.